Welcome to Perspectives in Peds, or PIP for short, your go-to podcast for insights into paediatric practice. From clinical approaches and emerging research to the everyday wins and challenges, we bring you OT perspectives that inform, inspire and spark conversation.
Welcome back to PIP.
Hey, Jack.
Hi.
I'm joined by Michaela and Kid Link Occupational Therapy today, and we thought we would do an ep on career progression. So I guess the main thing that prompted this was us thinking about how career progression often looks in allied health at the moment. We're coming at it from the perspective of private practice, but just in general based on the award and those kinds of things. And we thought we'd try and challenge some of the ideas around career progression, but also give people some tips to think about and hopefully a bit more food for thought and zooming out and just, I guess, feeling like we're kind of in control a little bit in terms of in a shifting landscape and those kinds of things. So we thought that we might kick it off by just chatting about what career progression kind of looks like at the moment from our perspective in allied health, and then explore a little bit about how we can kind of fit amongst that. So what does career progression mean to you guys?
Well, usually in allied health, we have our grades, so like grade 1, grade 2, grade 3. Pretty much always you'll start as a grade 1. Some people even have like so new grads, you could be a new grade 1, or you might start as a grade 1. But basically what it looks like is when you're grade 1, you come out and your whole life is about clinical. You are seeing clients. That's really where your focus is amongst your learning. And then as you progress, usually what happens is the clinical work decreases and the non-clinical increases. So that's how it usually goes in allied health.
And I guess that's mainly influenced for us by the award. So the I'm going to butcher it, but the Health Support Services Award.
Don't look
like
to me
that.
for help. No idea.
And there are other awards like the New South Wales Award and hospital awards, but they all tend to take that same kind of approach in that there's certain competencies at different levels, and they do move from really more clinical to management type team leader roles. And I think that in private practice particularly, I think there's been a real emphasis to, as people progress, it just means that they're strong clinically, so let's just give them people to teach, which in theory makes sense. But I guess we did another episode on leadership versus management, but that there should be a distinction there, that just because you're teaching someone to do a role doesn't necessarily make you automatically a team leader or a good teacher necessarily. So in terms of things that or trends that we've noticed, like with colleagues and we supervise a lot of external OTs, what are some of the ways that we're seeing career progression done?
Less clients, I think.
Yep.
That's a big one that I see as people move up the ranks, you could say, that their caseload drops and is spent, like you said, perhaps teaching other OTs, or I've even seen sometimes doing more like admin stream work, like managing different things, or practice management. I've heard of before, like OTs taking that role. That's how I see it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, really similar, and a lot more, which fits into like that non-clinical work, but a lot more supervision. And I've even had people who have like, look, I've received really sporadic or even no supervision for the many years they've been working, and now they've progressed and they are now supervising the team. So obviously before that person progressed, the team didn't have any real supervision, and now this person is technically on paper senior enough to now be a supervisor, and so a big part of their job is supervising others even though they really haven't been supervised themselves. Supervision is often a big one too.
I think we can talk from, talking from our perspective, I guess that's the point of the podcast, but what do we see as, an appropriate time frame if we're ballparking it for our setting to be a grade 1 OT?
Sorry, how long it takes until you're a grade 1?
Until you're grade 2.
Until
how
grade
long
2.
do you spend in grade 1?
I think there's no answer to that from my perspective. That's a really tricky question because I think, again, it depends on what your career goals are, you might be actually happy to stay as a grade 1 for a while. And if you're switching streams within OT, then you might move back to being a grade 1 when you've been a senior in like pediatrics
If I
or something
need to go
else.
to assistive tech or aged care,
Yep.
I'm a grade 1.
Yep.
I would have to be. I don't know how you could do it any other way. Like the skills, we were talking about this earlier, the soft skills and, understanding how a clinic works, all of that sort of stuff, that will obviously transfer with you. But I would have no idea how to do equipment prescription, home mods, beyond like a little bit that I learned in placement. So you're right, there probably is no time frame as such. But let's say for someone who's working full time, Jack, do you know off the top of your head, even award-wise, when the progression is, when grade 2 is meant to be up for discussion?
So based on my understanding and what I've been told by HR is that at each level, so the grade 1 level, you keep progressing annually until you reach the top tier of grade 1, which is grade 1 pay point 6, I think there is at that tier.
Yep.
And then you don't automatically go up to grade 2 until you meet the job description of the next one.
Yep.
So from a compliance perspective, and I don't want to get too bogged down on that, but if you are expecting someone to operate at the grade 2 compliance and they're operating at that level, you shouldn't really be keeping them at grade 1 because you're expecting them or their role or their skills or their is now operating at a level 2. And it's a little bit less clear at those earlier stages. But as you move to senior clinician and grade 4 kind of levels, it's quite obvious that shift to more of those non-clinical, strategic, operational, people management type descriptions, I guess, that are in there. So if you've got someone early career who is doing a lot of those roles, it gets quite muddy in terms of what, from a Fair Work perspective as well. So from my perspective, I think there needs to at least be a couple of years. I think early career is minimum 2 years that someone is operating at a grade 1 level before they count as, I guess, what we would consider a grade 2 or someone who everyday type things that are familiar to them they can do quite competently with less support than when we're in that real training early career phase. And that's absolutely a ballpark. No one, take that as gospel, please. But from my perspective, that's what I would say.
And I think it is really important, though, especially in the current climate where a lot of people are becoming sole traders very early on. And because you're expected to operate autonomously, mostly autonomously at a grade 2 level, you're not expected to do that at a grade 1 level, like a lot of support. So if you go straight into, opening up your own practice or even early on or things like that, it'd be very hard to do if you're a sole trader if you've got grade 1 competencies, as you should, to be operating at a higher grade. It's certainly worth thinking about of being like the environment I'm either choosing or putting myself in or have been offered. Does that actually align with the competencies that I would be at? Because the tricky thing is you can't get those foundational years back. I mean, you obviously can't with anything, but I supervise a few people outside of our clinic, and even Gab's actually inside of our clinic, you wonder about with your first few years out, that was the time that you could really focus on just your learning, and you can just thought, I don't know, I'm a new grad. Yeah. Unfortunately, like I know for us, Georgia and Dana, who because we got some I can't even see. I was about to call Georgia and Dana our old new grads. They're not old new grads. We're going into grade 2.
Second most recent
yes,
cohort of grads.
Going into grade 2 roles. But they were like, damn, when we get new grads, we won't be able to say, I don't know, I'm a new grad. Like it's really not, I know it can feel tricky for some people. It's really not a bad place to be. And, if you've got control over it and things, I wouldn't want to rob yourself of that time where it is literally in your job description that you'll be pretty highly supported.
And depending on the industry and what you end up doing if you do work for yourself, I just think I can't think of a scenario where anyone in their first 2 years out should be working independently as a sole trader. I mean, challenge me on that. But I think, like you said, it's a very narrow scope that you are competently operating under if you're a sole trader, I think, any earlier than that. When we move on to grade 2, I think that's where like you are a competent OT and it's a little bit more grey, like Mick said, around just some people just want to really feel as a competent clinician. They don't actually want additional responsibilities. They want to do their job and they want to do it well. And that doesn't mean that they can't dive into more advanced areas of practice and really solidify themselves in terms of progression as a grade 2. But it really is that higher level of competence. And I know I made the mistake of taking a grade 2 locum. You did too. Didn't you?
Yes.
You? Yeah, we both
Yes.
took grade 2 locums in hospitals.
When we were straight out of uni,
Yep.
I just did not understand what that meant.
Yeah.
And I also would challenge why grade 2
They said yes.
locum positions are being offered to fresh out.
Yeah.
That now, obviously you know better, you do better.
Yeah.
And I hope that people do know better. But you cannot operate. I just don't know how you could operate at that competency level.
You need your workplace to set you up for success in terms of highlighting, I guess, there is some things you don't know and we need to teach you, but also building you up enough that you don't lose confidence.
And it's not just workload. Like I think there's a misunderstanding there, particularly if people recruiting are not clinicians, that they just think, well, if I pay them at a higher rate, that kind of buffers the extra learning tax that they're just going to have to take on to do the job. Things might take them a bit longer, but we're paying them more, so all good. It's actually far more complex than that in terms of actual just skill development. So I think just chucking money at it is absolutely not the answer. I'm not saying I don't understand why it's happening in our industry, because people are desperate for leadership roles. People are needing support. We've got graduates that are their first year, so if they can get someone who's only 2 years out to, come in and supervise, it's better.
Yes. Well, because we're losing a lot of our senior workforce because of just the conditions.
That's
basically
exactly right.
As a general profession within health. It's often undervalued, underpaid and overworked.
Yeah.
So you can
when
see why a lot of people leave.
want to fill positions, they're just like, okay, well, we're just going to put this hefty salary on it and we're going to call it a grade 2 position, and then we're just going to pick the most experienced person that we can for that role, and beggars can't be choosers, to put it bluntly. So I think that that's a real shame, because it's kind of muddying career progression. It's making it very linear and kind of losing I think it loses its what's the word? Like credibility?
Oh, dilutes it?
Yeah,
almost.
it does dilute it.
And it can dilute the profession.
Yeah, because, we've got like Cowie who's 9 years out and potentially operating under a role that she's worked extremely hard for and is absolutely competent and has met every indicator possible to be given that role. And then there's people 2 years out being given senior OT roles elsewhere, and absolutely can confirm not doing as good of a job of it. But it does make you wonder why you're kind of why you're working towards certain things or working hard for things. So we kind of wanted to propose a little model that we spoke about before this, because when we were talking about this linear idea that's happening in allied health, where it is these are your roles and you go to expos and people are selling, well, first there's this, you do this for 2 years, then you become a team leader, then you become an area manager, then you become, and it's this very linear thing. And we were like, okay, like that's very destination focused and that's fine if that works for you. But we would like to encourage people to think about their career progression more as something that has a bit more flex. And the best analogy we could come up with was a rock climbing wall. We're open to suggestions.
We are, because this is a bit fast and loose. This was thought about 5 minutes before recording. We're like, we think it makes sense. So please feel free if you got something better.
Because we like the idea that it's still an upwards trajectory, but it's not this linear ladder that sometimes actually means climbing over people as well, if we're really brutally honest about it. But that it is this idea that actually it is still a progression that could look multiple ways. Sometimes it is straight up, you're right there next to the ladder. Sometimes it is sideways. Sometimes Mick was talking about maternity leave or extended leave, that there's a shift where you actually need to kind of scramble back down in order to take a different path.
Yep.
Or whatever people do when
We
they're rock
spoke about
climbing. Obviously none of us
bringing that up.
Yeah, we did. We did speak about things we don't know about. And I don't think it would be a tent. Isn't it like a hammock?
Hammock, close enough.
You have to camp out for a little
Yeah,
bit.
you're pausing. You're pausing. That's
pausing,
the takeaway.
taking a
You're
break.
resting.
And that sometimes you don't actually know even what the view from the top will even look like. And I think there's a huge amount of pressure within allied health to understand that, because it's such with OT, but I know with a lot of other professionals, you know, speechies as well. If you go into one field, it's quite hard to shift to another without going back down the rock climbing wall and starting again. So it's okay to have a little bit of a vague idea of what you want it to look like, but understanding that if we were to switch to, even me as a business owner that's been an OT for, you know, what is it? I don't even know, 18 years, 19 years.
I love that you've lost count. It's great. Trust.
It's hard to remember when you're 77. No. It'd be about 15 years.
If I went into hand therapy, hospital work, neuro, rehab, I am absolutely starting at the bottom.
In terms of clinically, yeah.
Yes. Yep. And yes, I like to think I have some soft skills around management and teams and those kinds of things. And in the right role, sometimes the clinical side doesn't necessarily come into it. But for the most part, I think that needs to be heavily considered. And I think there's a huge part for us. Our leadership team does need to have a sound understanding of the clinical work. They need to have done it. They need to do it the way we do it. But there may be roles in hospitals where there's so much management and coordination that you don't really have to be the most experienced clinician to do that role. So again, we're talking about this rock climbing wall that, not getting too stuck on the top of the ladder and thinking more about that you're just enjoying the journey, and that when you get to the top, you don't know how it's going to look.
Yeah. So not just looking straight up, but sort of zooming out and seeing that there's different ways. And hopefully it's a good example, but Mick and I were speaking about this because Mick is a senior OT with us, and sort of some of my role is like it's all under clinical lead, but technically some's like clinical lead, some's like senior. So the work, for example, where mine and Mick crosses over in that senior stuff, Mick would hate her job if she did what I did.
Yeah.
And
We had many a discussion about that earlier on.
I was like, I don't want that job, but I want to progress. So what does that look like?
Yeah.
And so you can sometimes have a look at who might be up ahead or whatever and be like, oh, I do want to progress, but I don't want it to look like that. So we really want people to think about the fact that your job, obviously for things that are within your control, can actually look different even within progression. Like Mick has much more of an interest of maintaining a stronger client-facing role than I do. I still really want some, but I want less than Mick. And Mick is really heading up like our quality assurance, outcome measures, things like that for client-facing service, whereas I take much more of an interest in the teaching of other allied health professionals. At this point, who knows? We might end up again swapping it around, but neither of us would be fully into each other's job, yet both are progressing. So we just want people to have a think about sometimes you are able to progress, but it might look different. So like Jack was saying about, you know, with Fair Work or our award or whatever it is, there will be certain points that you'd have to hit in order to progress if you'd like to. But if that gives you like your main boundary, you can usually be flexy within it if possible.
I think it's important that when we're thinking about this rock climbing wall as well, that there are different people on the wall. I think that has almost like in our workplace created like motivation to see, I guess, to also like follow in people's paths, but also like outline that there might be new paths they can follow if they have new ideas, and also can look up and trust that the people up there have gotten there for, I guess, a reason, and they haven't just what do you like reel it up?
Belay?
I don't know.
Is that the word?
I think that's actually just rock climbing.
I'm going to be so embarrassed when I Google that after this.
What's the one without the ropes? Free climbing.
Free climbing.
Where they just scale the mountain without any ropes.
Yeah.
No safety.
Wow. Yeah, I think I accidentally did that when I went into a locum job straight out of uni. I didn't know I was free
Yeah.
climbing.
No safety.
Yes.
Well, we could really run with this.
Yeah,
analogy.
I don't think we should.
No, we haven't QA'd it enough.
No, please. Let's just get back on track. Career
I guess
progression.
those people, they do map out like different ways. And if you look at a mountain and like,
Oh boy, we're going back to
sorry.
it. Go on. If you have to.
There's this idea. There's actually hundreds of ways to
Yes.
climb a
Yes.
mountain. That like legitimately, you can buy manuals on how to climb,
Yeah.
and it will map out the different ways you
Different
can climb
peaks
a
as
mountain.
well.
Oh
Different
wow!
endpoints at the top.
Yeah, so to bring us back on track, what is your next question about the career progression?
Please stop. The types of progression opportunities. So I wanted to talk about, yes, there is management progression opportunities, but we just wanted to quickly touch on the idea that there is clinical progression opportunities. There's also teaching, and we don't want to downplay the roles of our friends in academia as well, that there is actually research. And so there's tons and tons of ways that you can pivot sideways, upways, go back down a little bit to go another way. So really think about, sounds ridiculous, but actually what you enjoy, and look for opportunities that arise that give you a sense of relevance and give you a sense of, I guess, challenge. And as long as you're feeling like stimulated and relevant and excited at times, we acknowledge work is still work. There's going to be days where you're like far out. But I think overall you want to feel like there's another foothold above you, that you haven't met the top.
Yeah.
Like there's opportunity and I'm here for it. And when that opportunity stops being there and there's no plans to kind of create further opportunity, that's where you might be like, is there another wall? Can I shift sideways? Those kinds of things.
Well, that reminds me though of a few of our mates who are OTs who their idea, I haven't asked them explicitly, but from what they have done with their professional lives, they almost climb to like around a grade 2 position, and then they're like, sweet, I know enough about this setting, so I'm going to jump to another setting. And then they want to go to grade 2 in that setting and go to another setting. So their idea of progression actually more looks like being, say, within still the pediatric space, but gathering a wealth of experience
breadth
around
of knowledge,
around that grade 2 level. So like super clinical, nothing to do with person management.
Yeah.
But what they wanted to do was get all of these experiences, and now they've actually ended up running their own practice, but because that's what they wanted to do. They didn't really want to go to like a management or seriously like non-clinical level within an organization. They actually just wanted to get a breadth of knowledge around direct client care in as many spots as possible, and then put that together to either open their own practice or be a sole trader. And that was their hope.
Yeah, I really like that insight. And I think when we're talking about where you sit organisationally versus professionally, I think that's something that we really want people, both individual clinicians but also those in management, to think about really carefully and understand that a grade 2 role in one place is completely different to another. It's not almost standardized enough. But then from my perspective, as a business owner, I love that it's not standardized. I love to have the flex to meet people where they're at and create roles and all of those kinds of things. But understanding that there's a lot of variation in our industry in terms of what that looks like.
What do you think about, Jack, when someone comes to you and thinks that they're ready to progress? What goes through your mind, and what questions, I guess, do you like to hear from them, or what sort of questions do you ask them?
It's a really good question. I think there's I really look for more of the soft skills, because I think that as people progress and take on responsibilities, that usually means like more autonomy. That's usually what progression entails, more autonomy but more responsibility. So there's a lot of like relinquishing control a little bit on my behalf. So that means I need someone who is aligned with Kid Link's values, and that I think is doing it for the right reasons and has done the self-work in terms of knows their blind spots, knows their strengths, knows their weaknesses, and has really worked on the self-awareness and other things that we spoke about in our leadership episode. So when they come to me, I guess there's a conversation, yes, around the clinical KPIs and those kinds of things, but also I often get curious around why they want it to start off with, because I like to just know people's, motivations, but then also why they think they're deserving of it. And I think that can really highlight, I think often people who are ready come to me already knowing they're ready, and we both kind of have a pretty good understanding that that's where we're at. I don't like the question, what do you need to see from me? Not that I don't like it. I love that it's
You ask that and you're getting demoted. not promoted, not staying the same, demoted.
What don't you like about it?
I shouldn't say I don't like it. I like
Hate it?
but I see
Despise it.
I see it as very much the first step of a conversation that's a little bit more down the road. So it's often a harder discussion, a harder conversation, not always, but often people who are asking that feel that they're more ready than they potentially are from my perspective.
Is it if they're leading with that?
Yes.
Because that sounds like it can be an adjunct.
I'm ready. What do you need to see from me? And often I find that the better question is, this is where I think I'm at. This is what the work I've done. This is the skills I've demonstrated. Is that aligned with what you're seeing? Mm-hmm. And it's more of a collaborative discussion around, yes, then like this is what I'm thinking. These are my goals. This is what I think I need to do to fill those gaps. What am I missing? As opposed to, can you fill all the gaps for me? Because I think it just shows that added step of reflection and having done the work to kind of figure out that, is this something I want and for the right reasons, and I'm genuinely ready because of A, B, and C, as opposed to, I've been here a few years and like, why haven't I been promoted and what's next? Like, what do you need to see to bring me up to speed? So I guess, I don't say I hate the question, but when it comes to that question alongside I want to be promoted, I like there to be a bit more thought behind it. Does that answer that question?
Yeah. I have another question.
Oh, go for it.
What are your thoughts on, I guess, when you are having you have a largish team? I would say we have a team of 20-something now.
21 now.
When you have such good staff retention and everyone is progressing, what, I guess, like even tips maybe for other business owners, if there's any listening, would you have in terms of making sure that there are opportunities for everyone, I guess, moving up with progression?
It's a really good question. I think first and foremost, I realize I'm in a very fortunate position for that to be the case for me. I never thought I'd have such an experienced team. And so I think the analogy that comes to mind is…
It's square peg, round hole, isn't it?
Yeah.
Boom. Got it. You could surely…
Someone would think that you've been working with me a really long time, Cowie.
I just don't want the rock climbing wall to come up again. So I'll take anything. Yeah. Square rock, round hand.
I'll find a way to link them later. Is this idea that I think a lot of people create a business that's quite concrete and they create a pegboard. I don't know, is that the right analogy? And they have all these round holes and they're like, now I need to find these pegs to plug up these holes because this is the structure that I need and the structure that finances my business. And that's a huge part. So I don't want to discredit the need to balance, especially in a fee-for-service model, people bringing in money. That's what we do. It's the reality of how you pay for everybody. So, but I do like to think that actually for me, it's always worked much better to create holes for the pegs that I have because the pegs can change and you can't rely on, or if you invest too much in specific people, you can also get caught out as well in terms of, the business needs to pivot with the people you have, in my opinion. So that means that there's multiple layers and you've got to think about that. But I love people. I love the people I work with. So for me, it's exciting and I'm motivated to make that work as opposed to people being more transactional or, that there's going to be a limit when people leave and that you need to be able to replace them, and that junior therapists are the cheapest and they bring in the money. Whereas I love opportunity and I love the cool things that come out of people moving forward. So yes, those things need to make money, and you have to find the balance as you create service streams. And you do need to think about the company structure, and sometimes that means that you're going to have more bums in seats and not be making any more money. And that's okay if your values and your motivation is to keep good people. So I think that was a really long-winded answer. I didn't even know that's where I was going with that answer. But I think it is the pegboard. It's being able to keep the pegs that you really want and create holes if you can, and make sure that the pegboard still has the right structure that you need it to.
Yep. You both are very experienced OTs. Having so much experience under your wing, what does career progression now look like where you are both at in your career journey?
She thinks she's in the hot seat over here, doesn't she?
I know.
Firing the tricky ones. You go first, Cowie.
Deflection, that's what it looks
Because
like.
I don't
apparently.
think it ever ends. I think it's always ongoing, and you might think there's an end inside of what you want to get to, but I don't think that's ever where we know we're heading.
Cowie resigns on air.
Yeah, I have an absolute crisis of being like, my God, it really is never ending. No, it actually is never ending, which is the good and the bad bit. It's both, but it's to say with the career progression, it is now, it's funny, you don't feel like you're starting back at grade 1 because currently, for context, I'm a grade 4 OT and Mik's a grade 3. Jack, what would you even –
I think I count as grade 5 now.
Grade 5? Yeah.
It's very non-clinical, I can confirm, and it's all business and management. Yeah.
So for me, it's quite interesting because the new things that you are opened up to when you progress to more of the non-clinical roles, it's quite interesting because you are really relying on your soft skills that you've developed from your clinical work and extra training, because then you start doing these things that don't start from a grade 1 level. I'll try to make this make a bit more sense, but supervising, for example, you're not on the tools as a supervisor, nor should you be from the get-go. But then sometimes as soon as you get into, let's say, that grade 3 role, you're just expected to be able to supervise well because you've been a supervisee.
Yes.
And we don't actually train up that skill set. We're really lucky that we do, but that's not the norm at all. And so sometimes you can get to this point of grade 4 when the responsibilities that you have, you need to perform at a grade 4 level, but you haven't almost even been through a grade 1 level with those responsibilities.
Yeah.
So for me, and I think that's why too it always feels like new learning. The career progression for me is now, I think, for where I want to be, I have no desire to go further up the wall at this point. I would love to get to know the wall, the current wall, and just go side to side.
Yep.
And instead of as well, I hate that I'm thinking in these terms now, but
can we just put on the record that Cowie went back to the wall analogy?
I know, and I hate myself for it. So instead of looking up now, I'm keen to more move side to side to become hopefully a good solid grade 4 and spend more time looking down to see where everyone's at, how I can help bring them up. That's actually how I want to. I don't even know what a grade 5 role or anything is. I actually have Jackie. Yeah, I'm going to take over a business as actually the next role.
But it could look different. That's the thing.
Yeah, is the takeaway, I think.
Yeah, I never want Cowie to leave me. You can put that on the record. Yeah. So if I will continue to create holes as much as I tangibly can because I value everything that she brings to the table and contributes, and that's just because of her skill as a clinician, but also just her love of learning and her natural ability to be a good leader. And I hope that everybody kind of gets to that point. And I don't even know what that business will look like. For me individually, I never thought I'd even run a business. So I don't. And everyone asks me because, well, what is your 5-year plan? I'm like, oh, well, who will be on my team in 5 years?
Yes.
So do you feel like your career progression, like if we're thinking of you as an
Oh,
OT,
shit.
yeah,
I know where this is going.
yeah, like against, like say against the award or things like that, like what do you, like, yeah, what is next even in terms of your skill development, if you think of it like that? Because for me, for example, my skill development, I think like, yes, everything's at a grade 4 level, but for me, and you know this because you're my supervisor, I'm really zoning in on hopefully becoming more of like an expert just in our workplace around like sticky ethical cases, but then also my supervisory skills. I really want them to always be like on point. And I would say if you compared the work I do with kids versus the way I supervise, I'm not much better at working with kids. I don't know how to say it. I feel like I'm good at both, but all your experience often, because of that linear-ish progression, you've got so much more experience doing your direct client work that even though it's grade 4 now, I feel like there's a whole other like world of skills to be opened up that feel like you've got to put a lot of time and energy into, for sure.
I feel like for me, it's also like I genuinely find joy in my team achieving things. So there's absolutely things that excite me, like mixed sleep program. And like I have been so tempted to be like, oh, look, if there's a couple that come through and I could do 8 weeks of
Take him.
of a client to support their sleep, I am tempted as because I love learning the clinical side and I've loved watching Mik build that and grow that. So I guess at the moment it's living a little bit vicariously, but I'm not closed to still developing my clinical skills. In saying that, I love the opportunity to grow teachers and mentors and supervisors. So that's actually what excites me, whether that's through our courses, whether that is through supervisors, whether that's from best practice and expanding what our service even looks like, because I've just got so much skill now within our clinical work, whether that's parent programs, group programs, those things excite me because I can be part of it, but also mentor and lead and give opportunity. So I think that's the wishy-washy answer. I'm sorry.
Think though, with what Mik was saying, that's why like it sort of never stops. There's no end point because
different
depending on who you're working with as well. Like when, for example, Jack, when you were grade 4 and I was grade 3 or whatever it was, you didn't have as much of a teach the teacher moment, whereas you now do with me. So like you've got to respond to where, like organizationally, where it's at the time. So your progression now might be around being like, well, how do I actually help Cowie to be the one that does oversee the team and what are my skills within that? So I feel like depending on the opportunities that come up because of the grade will depend on what you want to build.
I maybe have one last question. Do you think all career progression equals moving from me to we thinking? Or do you think it can look different?
Well, I think based on this whole conversation, our answer has to be different because, so when we say me to we, and this is something I drill into Mik.
I love it.
Which she's done a great job at, is that often in summation, usually what happens is when you do get promoted to more of a leadership or management role, you are often promoted because you've been a high-performing individual. A high-performing individual. So you are used to zoning in on your own caseload, hitting KPIs, whatever it is, just really being quite, in the best way, like self-centered, because that's your job. Like that's what you need to do.
And it's an autonomous role for the most part.
Exactly.
Being an OT.
Yes. Very autonomous. And then often as you get moved, and this is a classic from I think more grade 2 to 3, is that the focus needs to shift off me, and more to we. You are now no longer just overseeing yourself. You're actually more responsible for other people's success as well.
Yeah.
And so that's what we talk about when we say moving from me to we. And it's a really interesting thing, and something that I found I had to work on really hard because I was so used to me, and that's why often you get promoted and then all of a sudden it's we. So with that background, can you ask your question again?
Well, perhaps can I add a comment instead? I think when people move up and they're we thinking, it supports the whole team. So maybe it is falling into that leadership model, but I want my leaders to be thinking about me, not just themselves. So I think it helps everyone, I guess, move in the direction that they want, whether that's linear or whether that is sideways, whatever way.
Well, I'm actually
you want to know,
wondering,
don't you, that the people leading you or supporting you have your interests at heart.
Yes.
Like
But I think with what we've been speaking about, that it can look different. I think that if you want to, for example, be like, no, I actually really like this grade 1 or grade 2 role, which has more me thinking than we thinking, I think that it's fine to stay there and excel there and not. So I don't think that career progression, depending on what you want it to look like for you, necessarily relies on being a we thinker. Do I think it would make anyone from grade 2 and up a better clinician? It obviously helps everyone, but in grade 1, I want you to be really focused on yourself. I want you to just be like fully focused on only what you have to do. Like it's your time for some serious learning.
Stop looking at the people on the wall.
Yeah.
Look at where you're going.
Yeah, that's it. That's all I want you to focus on. So I think it's a really good quality to have. But do I think that, you could still progress if you want to do, for example, grade 1 roles and really excel and be like, no, I want to be in this role for much longer. So do I think that it's a necessity? No, depending on where you want to move and how you want to move. Do I think that it's an excellent skill that everyone should try to develop, especially if you want to be a leader, and leadership is a behavior, not a position.
Yeah.
So
if you're going to work in teams, arguably, yes. If you're going to be imparting your knowledge on anyone, arguably there needs to be an element of that. But I think you could strive for just clinical excellence in an autonomous role and maybe get away with it. But I think to flow on to where this has been a long episode, so I could keep talking.
We love chatting.
Yeah, we love chatting about this. But I guess linking that, what is one thing that you hope clinicians, or it can be a couple of things, listening, understand about career progression, or that you want them to take from this episode?
I would love people to think that I should know the proper word for it because I'm actually not sure if it's KPIs or the award. I know they influence each other, but that those are like your boundaries of what we need to fit in, but there's flexibility within that. Obviously that depends on the workplace and everything like that. But I would love for people to have a think that they can be something that we need to adhere to, but then the role description doesn't need to look exactly the same.
Yeah, I love that. I was actually going to say the same thing more for managers to think a bit flexibly around how you create career progression. Like we've got, senior roles that look quite different in terms of portfolios. So being a bit flex in terms of whether it's clinical, whether it is management, whether it's learning, teaching, supervision, mentoring. So being open-minded to that is something that I would like managers to think about. And then for clinicians seeking progression to have open conversations and really explore that wherever you can. And sometimes that does mean looking elsewhere. Sometimes there is scope to actually, see it through for quite a while in one business. But thinking about what is resonating well with you, I think.
Yeah.
What about you, Mick?
As an employee, having genuine trust that your employer has your best interest at heart and is transparent, so you know what is actually possible to work towards. And like you said, if that means that that perhaps your employer is going to say, yeah, go for this other opportunity, I think that's, trust and transparency I think is really important.
Good one. Well, we hope people got something out of that. Thanks for joining us, and thanks Michaela and Caitlin for your honesty and transparency as we spoke about career progression.
Happy climbing, everyone.
See you next time.